All right, we are talking about that thing that so many of us become obsessed with over the course of our day to day. So, we've been talking a lot about Taurus, Taurus being that archetype of money, of wealth, of wanting more, of accumulating, of feeling safe and secure because of what we have, pleasure, the self confidence to get what we want. And that is Taurus. But every sign has a partner, and Taurus's partner is Scorpio. Scorpio and Taurus are the financial axis, which means that in order to work with money, relate to money, build more money, we have to look at the Scorpio side, which can relate to lack, not having enough, feeling like our money comes from somebody else or something else that we don't have control over, feeling like we have to give all of our money away, and debt. And this can feel really difficult and problematic. And I think more often than we would like to admit, we might find ourselves on the Scorpio side of things, just flat out feeling like there's not enough. So we're going to get into that today. I'm Natha Perkins of Electra Astrology. What's going to follow is an edited version of an episode that I release on my podcast in 2024 in season 5. I'm editing them and I'm re-releasing them here on the podcast as well as on YouTube, so you can find all of these teachings in one place. I've been going through and covering multiple facets of every single sun sign. You don't have to be a Taurus. You don't have to be a Scorpio. You have Taurus and Scorpio in your chart. And by listening to these talks, you will see yourself differently. You will make connections and ideally be able to understand, why do I do it like that? Or why has it always felt like that? Or how can I change that a little bit? What do I need to do to just feel better about this? In this case, the money. We all want more money. We tend to feel like we don't have enough money. And when you get into the Scorpio within your own heart and soul, you will begin to understand what's really underneath that feeling of lack. And the same thing for Taurus. You want to accumulate money. You want to build your resources. You want to feel that strength and that power and that self-confidence to go out and make the money. Got to inquire. Got to look underneath. What's here? What am I good at? What is blocking me from what I'm good at? So we're going to get into that. If you like my style and you want to work with me privately, or maybe you want to become a student, maybe you want to check out zodiac journals. I also have a free ebook called Astrology is a Superpower. You can find me at electraastrology.com, and let's get into it. Let's talk some Taurus and Scorpio. Taurus and Scorpio. It's an axis that we all spend a lot of time in, thinking about, stressing out about. It is the axis of the money. Taurus represents the money. When I say money, I mean everything that you want, the goodies, the pleasure, the self-confidence, the financial wealth, the things that you want, the security, the stability, the deliciousness. These are all Taurus things. And Taurus is ruled by Venus, which is very feminine energy in nature. It's important when you're looking at your relationship to the goods that you go back into childhood to get a deeper understanding of what the messaging was in your family of origin around the goodies. Now, most of us, I think it's safe to say, feel stress when it comes to money. And there are so many different reasons for that, because we really do need money in order to successfully survive in our culture. I mean, there are ways, I suppose, to do it without money, but it's not a comfortable life. And so we learned from a really early age that the more money we have, the better off we are. And in many ways, that's true. The more love we have, the better off we are. The more pleasure, the more comfortable our life is. You know, these are things that are good. Certainly, we want to feel self-confident. We want to have a deep sense of self-love and self-respect. But second house, Taurus things can feel difficult to get a hold of. One of the main lessons of Taurus that we're all here learning is that we do have what it takes. We do have the power to generate the abundance, but our story, our childhood situations, and just being in a culture that is so money driven, the haves and the have-nots are so obvious to us, right? It's like, it's not like everybody is at the exact same financial level. And certainly with social media, it becomes even more obvious that many people seem to have a lot and their lives do seem to be better. I mean, we could
get in there and nitpick that and determine whether their lives really are better. But there's a general agreement, I would say, that when you have more money, your life is better. Okay, so when you go back into your childhood and you look at the money story, what did you learn? What did you learn about money? Was there always enough? Was there never enough? Did you hear your parents discussing their money in hushed voices, stressed out about whether they were going to be able to pay a bill? Did you see your parents spending extravagantly? Did your parents spend on themselves, but not on you? Did your parents favor one sibling over another, spending a lot of money on one sibling and not much on the other? Did your parents teach you that it was rude to talk about money or ask about money? Did your parents teach you about money? Did you watch your parents struggle with their parents over money? There's all of these different ways that the money story begins to formulate. We can look at what was happening through the course of our childhood in terms of our family's wealth or poverty level. It gives us a lot of information about our current relationship to money, because most of us tend to have a lot of fear when it comes to money, fear that there's not going to be enough or fear that it's going to run out. And there might, on the flip side of that, with families that had plenty of money, where nobody ever had to worry about money, there can be something that is difficult in that as well. A boredom, a lack of novelty. When you can afford to get anything you want, nothing is particularly exciting. So we're looking at all of that when it comes to Taurus, and in this case, our relationship to money. So think for a minute about what that was like for you, and spend this week, if you're interested, going through what you learned about money and how those teachings impact you to this day. Remembering that with Taurus, this is where we are supposed to have control. This is where we are learning how to create the abundance, learning how to seed that garden, tend to that garden, and then eventually harvest from that garden. Now, the flip side of Taurus is Scorpio. And Scorpio is where we are dealing with fear. Now, this is not to say that Scorpio is all bad, because Scorpio does bring us a deep awareness and it brings us the opportunity to transform. But before we get there, Scorpio rules lack. It rules other people's money. It rules debt. So this is the opposite of where we feel abundant, and this is where we tend to go into the fear. So if you were raised in a childhood where there was a lot of debt or a lot of stress about how to pay bills, or there was a sense that there wasn't enough, those are the Scorpio things. So we're going back and forth between this axis. And like I said, Scorpio isn't all bad. Scorpio is definitely an energy that is helpful in propelling us outside of fear into a deeper awareness. So if we can learn how to balance these two, understand that a sense of lack can be balanced out by a sense of self-confidence. Like, I have all this debt and I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I know I'm going to do it. And this is why Pluto transits, or planets that move into the sign of Scorpio, propel us into this deeper work, this deeper sense of having to confront our fears, because the fears typically stem from a deep fear that there won't be enough love, enough money, enough food, enough security and protection and stability. So if you think about in your life, your relationship to those spectrums, enough versus not enough, abundance versus poverty, self-love versus self-loathing. So take a breath, do a body scan. How is this feeling to be tapping into this subject matter? And where are you on the spectrum as we sit here today? Are you feeling confident and solid in your abundance, in your love, your self-love, confidence, your security? Are you feeling unstable, nervous, feeling a little powerless in your self-confidence, in your love, in your stability, in your money? I think it's safe to say that there is this constant vacillation on this spectrum. If your current worry isn't about money, it might be about self-confidence. If it isn't about self-confidence, it might be about your romantic relationships or love. As you've heard me say, Venus rules the things that we want more of. And Mars, being the ruler of Scorpio, the traditional ruler of Scorpio, and Pluto being the modern ruler, these are energies that take some combat. They take some willingness to go into the unknown in order to understand on a deeper level. So, one of the ways that we can work with this axis is to be willing to explore some of the difficult subject matters, be willing to talk about money and looking at our finances, looking at our debt, having deeper conversations with our partners, looking at our relationship to our own sense of worthiness, our own ability to either recreate what we lose or create what we didn't have in the first place. Because working with the Taurus archetype, it is very much a powerful archetype. It is the building, the accumulation, the solid, steady work that goes into creating your empire. But we also always have to face that mystery, that sense of what if, what would we do if something didn't work out? What would we do when something is chaotic or when we bring trauma to the picture or when we're dealing with somebody else's money? A lot of times we have to pay for other people, our children or family members that need help. A lot of times we have to ask other people for help, asking for money from family members, asking for loans, getting loans from the bank, getting loans from a credit card. And then we have to deal with paying that back. There's a lot of emotional energy that goes into having debt. So we have been in the midst of all of this Venus energy, all of this Plutonian energy for a few years, where we've had to really look at money and finances and debt and what we see externally in the form of a US government that is trillions of dollars in debt. We see internally in our personal lives so many people in debt, credit card debt, home debt, personal loan debt, etc. So what happens to your psyche when you have debt? How does that affect your relationship to abundance and to feeling like you have control over creating your empire, over creating resources? One of the solutions when we're talking about Taurus, when it comes to our relationship to abundance, is to remember that Taurus is slow and steady. We have to do a continuous amount of work in order to build the abundance, in order to generate the money, in order to feel the self-confidence, in order to have the potent, successful relationship. There's no quick, instantaneous thing we can do to create any of that. Nobody really becomes a millionaire overnight, and nobody really meets the love of their life and has a perfect relationship from day one. Remembering that with Taurus, just continuing to put the work in, continuing to understand, in this case, what your money story is. What is your relationship with money? What is your relationship with your sense of self-worth? What do your love relationships generally feel like? Do you feel deserving of pleasure? Do you feel as if you can get your hands on it if you put your mind to it? And if not, why? And can you practice? Can you start small with little things and start from the beginning and just continuing to put a little bit of time and energy into it every single day until you actually grow your proverbial wealth? I mean, that is really the solution with Taurus. This is a fixed earth sign. So it takes time, but you do see payoffs if you're willing to dedicate the time. And in working with the Scorpio archetype, what you do is you continue to go deep, continue to go into what was my history like? What were the traumatic messages that I got when it came to money? How do I feel about being in debt? How am I contending with my internal conflict? How do I deal with other people and having to share resources with other people? This is challenging, right? All of this is challenging. Taurus taking time to create is challenging. We want instant. Scorpio taking time to understand our negative patterns and our bad habits and the way that we deal with our challenges, like, ew, nobody wants to do that. And both of these things do require timing and a consistency in effort. This is where in Taurus, you learn that you can create whatever you need. There's always enough money. There's always enough love. There is always a well of self-respect and self-confidence that you can draw from. And with Scorpio, we learn that there's this transformative power of understanding the things that frighten us, getting so deep into the intricacies of what's really here, what happened to us in our childhood, how it is affecting our current situations. And understanding that takes the fear away. It's no longer scary. We no longer have to avoid it because we are no longer fearful of it. We are no longer so easily shamed. We are not so easily giving into our selfishness or our desire to control, and things are not flowing so carelessly out of balance. I want to reiterate, though, that this is the kind of work where it generally takes time, and ideally, you are seeking out help in the form of good conversations with best friends, financial advisors, marital counseling. These are all things that can really help with this process of dealing with these themes that we are all knee deep in every day of our lives, but that don't have to generate nearly the fear and the fear and the despondency that they can. So take a deep breath into this idea that it's all going to be okay, that you have an incredible amount of power when it comes to working this axis, knowing it is not an axis for anybody that is easy breezy. This is an axis that everybody on the planet is always working with in some respect, because even if you have plenty of money, you might struggle in love relationships. Even if you have an amazing relationship, you might struggle with self-confidence. And even if you are the most confident person on the planet, you might have money issues. And any mix of all of that, be with yourself for a moment. Get a sense of what this topic generates for you. What does it bring up? What are the emotions? And where do you feel them in your body? Is it in your solar plexus? Is it in your sacral area? Is it in your heart? Is it in your throat? Is it in your head? Know that any time that you feel one of these centers activated, especially when you are thinking about these topics and ruminating over what to do, how's it going to work, how's it going to go, blah, 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 that you can give some breath to that area. Just give some deep breaths straight into whatever area is feeling contracted. And that will give you a little bit of freedom and space to remember that you know what to do. You do have power. It might not be an instant fix, but there are very powerful ways to approach any fear or not enoughness that shows up in your field. All right, thanks for joining me, you guys. I hope that you learned something, and I will see you all soon.